Hi, my name is Linda. Before I tell you how my own mother humiliated me in front of the entire family, let me ask you something. Have you ever been called a disappointment by someone who was supposed to love you unconditionally? If yes, type yes in the comments and let me know where you're watching from. I want to know I'm not alone. This happened last year on Mother's Day. The day started like any other spring morning, except I had this quiet hope in my chest. For the first time in a while I had been invited to the family brunch. Usually I'd get forgotten or accidentally left out of group chats. But this time I was included. I even got a formal message from my younger sister saying, "Mom wants everyone there." I thought maybe things were changing. Maybe Mom was softening with age. I dressed carefully that morning. Picked a soft green blouse, did my hair nice and neat. I bought flowers. White lilies, Mom's favorite, and even baked a lemon pie just like she used to when we were kids. I practiced my smile in the mirror like a schoolgirl going on her first date. I just wanted the day to go well. When I arrived, the house was already full. My brothers were joking in the kitchen. My sisters-in-law were setting up plates. Kids were running around, laughter everywhere. And there she was, Mom, sitting at the head of the table, commanding attention like always. She barely looked at me when I walked in, just nodded slightly. But I held on to hope. Everyone took their seats. The dining table was full and my chair was way down at the far end like always. But I told myself not to read into it. Maybe it was random. Maybe it didn't mean anything. I tried to smile, tried to laugh when someone cracked a joke. But my stomach was tight the whole time. The food was delicious but I could barely taste it. Something in the air felt off, like a storm waiting behind a sunny sky. There we were, all gathered around the long dining table. The Mother's Day throne, as my older brother once jokingly called it. My mom sat at the head, her chair slightly taller, like she belonged in a courtroom handing out verdicts. The sunlight was pouring through the kitchen windows, making everything feel warm on the surface, but inside me it felt cold. I was sitting all the way at the end of the table, right next to the patio door, where the breeze kept touching my back like a whisper reminding me I didn't quite belong. My two brothers sat closer to her. One on her right, one on her left, both tall, successful, with confident voices that carried. One was in real estate, the other had just opened a new dental clinic. Their wives were beside them, dressed just right, makeup done, hair perfect, nodding and laughing at all the right times. My younger sister sat near the middle, beside her new fiancé, who looked around the room like he was already a part of the family. Even the grandchildren were close to her, climbing into laps, showing crayon drawings, basking in the attention. And then there was me, Linda, quietly folding my napkin over and over, pretending I wasn't counting the seconds. It started with a toast. My mother raised her glass and smiled, that well-practiced photo-ready smile she always wore at public gatherings. "I just want to say how proud I am of all my children," she said, her voice ringing through the room like a bell. "Each of you has made me so happy." I straightened up a little. My chest rose. Maybe this time she'd see me. Maybe she'd mention the new clients I had at my small bookkeeping business. Maybe she'd acknowledge that I'd been living on my own, paying rent, managing without help. She started pointing people out one by one. "Mark," she smiled at my oldest brother, "your business acumen, you get that from your grandfather. You've really built something strong." Everyone clapped. He nodded modestly, sipping his wine. "Danny," she turned to the younger brother, "I brag about your dental clinic to everyone. You're the first doctor in our family." More claps, more smiles. She looked at my sister. "And oh, Lily, you've always been the heart of this family. Always smiling, always full of love. Your engagement is the best news this year." I could feel the heat rising in my face. I tried to keep smiling but my lips felt stiff. My stomach turned as if something sour was sitting there, bubbling. Then came the moment. She turned slightly, not even looking fully in my direction, and said, "And as for Linda." She paused. My heartbeat got louder. I sat up straighter. My palms pressed together beneath the table. "I'm proud of all my children," she said again, louder this time, "except the loser sitting at the end of the table." The table went dead silent for a half second, just one single breath of stillness, and then came the worst part. A few people chuckled. Some laughed nervously, eyes darting away from me. My brother smirked into his glass. My sister-in-law looked down and shook her head, like she felt sorry for me but didn't want to say it. Even the kids stopped playing for a moment. I stared at her. My mother. The woman who gave birth to me. The woman I had brought flowers for. The woman I'd baked pie for. She didn't flinch. She didn't laugh. She didn't even smile. She just moved on like what she said was normal, like it wasn't a knife to the gut. My hands trembled. I pressed them into my thighs under the table, willing them to stay still. I felt like I was sinking in my chair, shrinking with every breath. And I wasn't even at that table anymore. I was 8 years old again, standing at the kitchen counter, peeling carrots while my brothers played video games in the living room. I had asked Mom if I could go outside and ride my bike, and she said, "No, someone has to help in the kitchen." I was 11, getting a B on my science project that I worked on for 2 weeks, and Mom barely looked at it. Meanwhile, my brother brought home a plastic trophy from a spelling bee and she had it framed. I was 16, watching my sister try on prom dresses while I sewed my own from leftover fabric, because there wasn't money for both of us. I told Mom I didn't mind. I said, "It's okay." But I did mind. I just never said it. I was 22, alone at college, working 2 jobs, sending home a portion of my check because Mom needed help with groceries. And still, she bragged more about my brother's new car than the fact I was the first one in the family to get a scholarship. And now here I was, a grown woman sitting at a table with people who shared my blood, and feeling like a complete stranger. I wanted to say something. Anything. But no words came. Just disbelief. Just heartbreak. I looked down at my lap, at the napkin I'd folded into a tight square. I wanted to disappear. I wanted the earth to open and swallow me whole. I sat there. So silent. Numb. And that's when I knew, this wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a slip of the tongue. It was intentional. Calculated. She wanted me to feel that small. That invisible. That unwanted. And in that moment, something inside me broke. I don't even remember how I stood up. Felt like my body moved before my mind could catch up. My chair made a soft scraping sound against the hardwood floor, loud enough to freeze every conversation at the table. All heads turned toward me, confused, curious, uncomfortable. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just reached into my purse, my fingers wrapping around the envelope I had prepared the night before. I had planned on giving it to my mother after brunch with a smile as a surprise, a way to say, "Look, Mom, I've made it. Aren't you proud?" But not anymore. I walked over to where she sat, still sipping her mimosa like nothing had happened. Her eyes met mine briefly, still blank, as if she didn't understand why I was standing there. I placed the envelope gently in front of her plate. Her perfectly manicured hand paused mid-air. "Happy Mother's Day," I said softly but clearly. "I hope you enjoy the gift." I didn't wait for a reaction. I didn't give her the chance to say something cutting or laugh it off like a joke. I just turned around and walked out. Every step I took felt heavy but steady, like I was finally walking away from something I'd been chained to my entire life. No one stopped me. They all just sat there, stunned. I could feel their eyes on my back. Some looked embarrassed. Some probably thought I was being dramatic. But I didn't care. Not anymore. The front door closed behind me with a soft click. Outside, the breeze hit my face, cool and freeing. The street was quiet. I stepped down the walkway, past the roses Mom had planted years ago, the ones she always said were too delicate for cold weather, just like me. Funny how that stuck with me all these years. And there it was, the silver Mercedes parked out front. Polished, shining, elegant. My mother had shown it off to everyone since the day it arrived. Told people her daughter helped her qualify for it. What she didn't say was that I'd made every single payment. She drove it. But I owned it. I slid into the driver's seat, the leather welcoming me like an old friend. The keys were already in my purse. She never expected me to take them back. Why would she? I was the loser at the end of the table after all. As I pulled away from the curb, I kept my gaze ahead. I didn't rush. I didn't hesitate. But just as I turned the corner, I saw something in the rearview mirror. My mother. She had burst through the front door, barefoot, hair flying, no shoes, no composure, just raw panic on her face. She was yelling my name. Screaming it, actually. Like she had just realized something too late. She stood in the driveway, arms flailing, calling after me. But I didn't stop. I didn't even slow down. Because by then, she had already opened the envelope. And the truth inside it was louder than anything she could have screamed. I could almost hear her scream echo as I drove further away, but it wasn't just a scream of shock. It was something deeper. It was the sound of control slipping through her fingers. The sound of a queen watching her crown hit the ground. As I drove, my chest was tight but steady. I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. I just breathed, because for the first time in my life I had spoken without words. And the envelope, that simple white envelope, had done what decades of begging, pleasing, and shrinking never could. He finally saw me. Inside that envelope was everything she needed to understand what I had become, and what she had lost. A few months before that brunch, I had quietly begun working with an attorney. I'd found some old documents my father had left behind. See, before he passed away, my dad had always kept to himself. He was quiet, observant. Not the warmest man, but not cruel. Unlike my mother, he didn't humiliate me. He just overlooked me. But he had trusted me more than I realized. He had left behind hidden shares in the family business, tucked away in a safety deposit box only I had access to. And guess what? They gave me 51% ownership. My hands had trembled the day I signed those papers. I remember staring at the numbers, rereading them a dozen times. For the first time, I didn't feel invisible. I felt powerful. And scared. But mostly I felt ready. The second thing in the envelope was the house deed. My mother loved to brag that she had built this house with her own hands after Dad passed. She said it often, especially when she wanted to remind me I didn't belong there. What she didn't know was that a few years back she had quietly refinanced the house to pay off some debts. The paperwork went through the family firm. So when I took control, the first thing I did was buy the mortgage. And then just months before Mother's Day, I paid off the balance in full. The house was now mine. And the legal deed in that envelope said so, in bold, printed letters. Linda Parker, sole owner. But I wasn't cruel. I didn't throw her out. I just let her know that the place she took pride in, the walls she used to belittle me in, now belonged to the one child she had laughed at the most. Then there was the letter. Handwritten. No insults. No anger. Just the truth. I told her how it felt to sit at that table year after year and be the shadow while everyone else basked in her approval. I told her how her coldness didn't break me, it built a stronger woman. A woman who didn't need her validation anymore. A woman who stopped trying to be loved by someone who didn't want to see her. I thanked her, not out of sarcasm but honestly. Because in trying to keep me small, she unknowingly lit the fire that made me grow. And the last item? A voided car title. You know the luxury car she used to show off? The one parked in the driveway that made her neighbors gasp? Yeah, that car. It had been a gift from me a year ago. She'd been so smug when she accepted it, telling the whole world how generous I was. But she never stopped mocking me. It was always, Linda's finally catching up, or at least she's useful now. What she didn't know was I kept the car title in my name. And inside that envelope was the voided title with a note that said, reclaimed, like my worth. That's when the scream came. Because it wasn't just about the house or the business or the car. It was about the shift. I wasn't the girl sitting silently at the end of the table anymore. I had walked away not with rage, not with tears, but with power. Quiet, calm power. And she knew it. I didn't need to say a word. The envelope had said everything. When I was 19, while my friends were heading off to college and dreaming about dorm rooms and bright futures, I was clocking into my second job of the day, at a diner just off the highway wearing a name tag and aching feet. I never told anyone, but I used to cry in the walk-in freezer on my breaks. Just a few minutes to breathe, wipe my face and go back to smiling at customers like my world wasn't falling apart. My college acceptance letter had come in the mail with a small scholarship, but we couldn't afford the rest, my mother had said. Not when your brother needs new cleats, or your sister's dance recital dress isn't going to buy itself. So I folded that letter and tucked it into the back of my closet. I never looked at it again. My siblings, the ones I supposedly couldn't keep up with, were handed everything. Private tutors, summer camps, sports gear, music lessons. I watched from the sidelines. Always cheering. Always helping. I drove them to practices when mom was too busy. I gave up weekends to babysit. I picked up groceries with my tip money. And the worst part? I didn't complain. Not once. Because I truly believed that if I kept being useful, kept being good, maybe one day she'd see me. Maybe I'd matter too. But that day never came. Instead, one day I came home early from my evening shift and found strangers in our house, moving my things out of my room. My books. My posters. Even my childhood piano, the one my dad had bought me when I was 8 after my first recital. Sold. Your sister needs a space to practice, my mom had said without blinking. You're barely home anymore anyway. I remember standing there, heart racing, lips trembling, but I didn't say a word. I just nodded. Then I packed what was left of my things in 2 garbage bags and moved into the basement. I told myself it was fine. I told myself I'd outgrow the pain. And maybe, eventually, I did. But not the memory. The memory of being erased. So I didn't lash out. I didn't yell. I didn't slam doors or run away. I worked. Quietly. I kept picking up shifts. I learned how to budget. I taught myself online courses on finance and marketing late at night after work. I took every job I could, from waiting tables to data entry to event planning. Anything that paid, anything that built something. By 25, I had my own apartment. By 27, I had launched a small business from my living room. A gift service that catered to corporate clients. It started with handwritten cards and grew into a 6-figure company. All by word of mouth. No loans. No handouts. No family support. Just grit. There were birthdays where no one called. Holidays where I'd send gifts to the house and hear nothing back. But I kept going. I told myself it didn't matter. That love didn't need to be loud. That maybe one day she'd surprise me and say, "I'm proud of you." That day never came. Instead, at the brunch, she looked me in the eyes and said I was the loser. And maybe once upon a time that would have shattered me. But not anymore. Because what my mother never knew was that the girl she thought was a shadow had quietly built a life so bright, it no longer needed her light. The first few hours after I left that brunch were silent. Not just outside but inside me. No more knots in my stomach. No more trying to swallow the lump in my throat. Just silence, like the calm after a long, hard storm. But by evening my phone lit up. First it was my sister, a short message, "You didn't have to make a scene." Then my brother, "Mom's been crying. You happy now?" Some didn't say anything at all, just question marks, missed calls, voicemails I didn't open. I didn't respond to any of them. Because for the first time in my life I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not because I'd gotten revenge. Not because I'd embarrassed anyone. But because I had finally chosen myself. I had finally stopped begging to be seen by people who only looked through me. I spent that evening on my couch, curled up with a cup of tea, my favorite playlist on low, and my phone turned face down. Outside, the city moved on. Inside, so did I. The next morning I opened my laptop and made a donation. A generous one, to a local women's shelter. In the section that asked for a name I typed, "In honor of Margaret, who taught me how not to treat a daughter." I checked the box to make it anonymous. That money would go to women who needed a safe place to land, the kind of place I used to dream about when I lived in that basement. A few days later I called the lawyer who managed the business account. We had a brief, professional chat, and then I made another decision. One that felt more personal than anything else I'd done. I started a scholarship. It was modest at first, but it came directly from the family business profits. Not for my siblings' kids. Not for anyone in our bloodline. It was for girls like me. Young women aging out of the foster system, daughters who had no family cheering them on, workers who had to skip college to survive. Every year one of them would get a letter and a check with no strings attached, signed with a name they'd never heard of. They didn't need to know my story. They just needed to know someone believed in them. Because I did. And maybe that's what healing really is. Not waiting for an apology that never comes. Not proving your worth to the people who chose not to see it. But choosing, every single day, to be the person you once needed when you were younger. And giving others what no one gave you. If you've ever been called the failure in your family, I want you to know something very important. You are not alone. I didn't get the apology I deserved from my mother, but I got something far more valuable. My peace. Sometimes the people who should love us the most don't see our worth, or they don't show it the way we hope. But that doesn't mean we are less than anyone else. You are not the mistakes you think you made. You are not the harsh words thrown at you. You are more than enough. I want you to remember that today, right now. Because healing starts when you stop believing the labels others put on you. I'm sharing my story because I know there are so many of you out there who have felt the same pain. Feeling invisible at family gatherings, being the disappointment, or hearing the words that cut deeper than any knife. It's okay to feel hurt. It's okay to be angry. But never forget, your value isn't defined by anyone else's opinion. So, tell me, have you ever been called a failure by someone who should have stood by your side? Where are you watching from? Please write your location and your experience in the comments below. I want to hear your story because sharing helps us heal together. And if you've ever been made to feel like you weren't good enough, comment, "I'm more than enough." Let's remind each other that we are strong, worthy, and capable of rising above pain. If you're on your own healing journey, don't walk it alone. Subscribe to this channel so you can find more stories like mine. Stories about betrayal, pain, but also about strength and victory. Together we'll grow, we'll heal, and we'll find peace. Remember, you are never just the loser or failure someone calls you. You're so much more. Thank you for listening to my story and thank you for sharing yours. Let's keep lifting each other up.